Hi, my name's Andrew Ng. I live in Hong Kong, and I'm making this video today to celebrate this season's bloom of orchids. As you can see around me, I've got like 7 different species, and the secret to my keeping orchids alive and not killing them? Well, I really don't know what the secret is. I know that the environment that I have is perfect, and I didn't do anything to it because Hong Kong is a tropical or humid environment. I have an east-facing window, and I have wonderful breezes. And the combination of all these factors have allowed me to bloom these orchids year in and year out. This is the 3rd year of bloom for some of these orchids. Some of these are first years. How I get my orchids is that I pick them up at the florists or people who leave town, people who don't want their orchids anymore after they've gone off bloom. They just kind of cut them and throw them away. I've managed to salvage and rescue quite a few different orchids. Some of them have been very, very sick. The potting method that I picked up for my orchids is basically I don't grow them in clay pots because I have a small apartment. I basically live in about 120 square feet, and 6-inch pots are heavy. Clay pots are heavy. They don't drain well. So basically, I've gone to a open plastic slotted basket. Some of them are on wires, as you can see here. These are on wires hanging on a rail that goes across the window, and I water them like crazy. And we'll talk about that. I mean, water is the #1 killer for orchids if it doesn't drain. If it drains and it dries out real quick, usually good. Air is the second one. If the air is not moving, mold and fungus will grow and it'll eat your plant alive. It'll start with the roots. If you get the water in the crown, it's also going to rot the crown out. And I've had a couple of orchids that have had crown rot. But I've managed to revive them. As long as you get down to 1 leaf and at least 3 roots, the plant can survive. And there's been a couple of them here. They take forever to rebloom. So if you're interested in flowers immediately, this isn't the thing for you. Go out and buy the, the factory hothouse orchids. They all come in their little pots. They're all like this, and the flower spike's perfectly gooseneck. Mine are all grown at an angle because orchids grow in trees. They grow at an angle. They don't grow straight up and down. They grow at an angle because the next generation comes and moves forward, moves the plant forward. If it was growing straight up and it was under the shady part of the tree, it would not get any more light. And the tree itself would get thicker and darker, and it would make it more difficult for the orchid. But as the orchids push their way along with the movement of the overhead canopy of the tree, it pretty much stays in the same amount of light. And of course, the flower spikes are all pushed out sideways so that the flowers can go into the light and attract the insects. They don't go up and down like that because in the dark, the insects won't be able to see them as well because insects are attracted to bright colors and things like that. But anyway, I'll show you how I water them. I show you how I've potted them, and I'm truly blessed. All I can say is, despite my best effort, these plants survive. Now, when you get the orchid, many times they come in these really tight-fitting plastic sleeves that only have a hole at the bottom, and that's okay. You don't need to water them that often. The florist that I get my plant from tells me to water them once a month because the plastic sleeve with only 1 opening doesn't drain very fast either. It retains water much like clay does. So this is a runt that came to me that was very sick about 2 years ago. I cut it back to 1 leaf. It had 3 roots growing out, and this is it today. And you can see how it just grows all over the place. You can see that the leaves, each and every subsequent leaf that grows out is bigger. And that's a telltale sign to say that you have the right environment. Because if the leaves are smaller, it means it's not getting as much light, or it's not in the right place, or it's not getting enough air. And as you can see, the roots that are in a clay pot will grow in circles and impact themselves. And they do like that. They like their security. But hanging them in a basket also allows these roots to just dangle free as they would normally. And watering them is a little more complicated, but can be done. I basically put them all in a shower, hang them in the shower rails, or put up a rack because I've got lots of plants, and just basically gently wash them down, leaves and everything. And of course, many of you have heard the old taboo, don't get water in the crown. That's only true if your plant is growing straight up. If it grows straight up, then the water will pool. If you don't have any air circulating, then mold and fungus are going to grow in that area and cause crown rot. And that means you basically have lost the plant, unless you know how to revive them. But for me, you know, plants grow kind of at an angle or haphazard in nature. And if you look at the way the leaves are, the next generation of leaf growth grows out. It's more rigid. The older leaves get a little softer, and then they start to droop a bit. So you basically have what's called the bow tie effect. And that allows them to have more energy for photosynthesis because the chlorophyll is exposed more to the light. And if you'll also notice, those of you that raise them in pot, when you repot, you'll see that the roots are all yellow or black if they're rotting. But here you'll see that they're all gray or green. Now, gray or green, well, basically they're gray when they're dry, but they're green when they're wet, and they have chlorophyll in them as well. So essentially the root also function like a leaf. It assists a plant in photosynthesis. And why these roots grow long is because when they grow in trees, they feed off bird droppings or whatever decomposition elements that are on the sides of trees, and it only happens when it rains. So the water runs down the tree, and so they get a long root to allow it more time to absorb the nutrients. So you don't really have to overfeed them. You just feed them very, very weakly. What I do is I feed these once a week after watering. I feed them once a week with a very dilute solution, 50%. How I know when this is ready to be watered again is I just push at the top. And if the moss, it's in moss in the plastic. If the moss is soft and feels cool, it's still wet. If it's hard, that means it's dried out. And essentially, that's the time to rewater. But if you know that your rate of evaporation is constant, and for me, it's every 7 to 10 days. I put them in the shower, I wash them down, wash the leaves down, fertilize, very simple. And I have this wonderful, beautiful east-facing window, which is huge, and actually, I don't get this much light, except for filming, because I've moved all the plants toward the back so that I could have the light to film myself. But generally, this whole area is occupied by plants. I've got 14 plants going right now. 8 are in bloom. And when I got all these, they were all cut. I had no idea what they were. And each and every one that's bloomed has been a different type of flower. It's just been amazing this year, and I'm celebrating this with you. So I hope you like this video. And if you've got any questions, put them in the bottom. But I can't answer all the questions. I only know that this is a system that works for me here in Hong Kong, where the temperatures go from 8 degrees up to 38, 40 degrees, and the humidity ranges from 50% all the way up to 95%. I believe that I'm just truly lucky, truly blessed. I just happen to have the right place for the right plant. And they happen to be phalaenopsis orchid. and they're rewarding me very, very well this year. I hope that you also can either create your environment or you have the environment. My environment's perfect. I inherited this environment. It's great. Thanks a lot, folks. And like this video or don't like this video, make comments or don't make comments. But I'm glad that you watched to the end and shared with me the joy I have in the blooms that I have today. 7 different ones this year. Thank you very much.